Yours to melt by Rimu-Chi before Walpergus third person POV . Before even the whisper of time could find a rhythm, before light had ever dared to dream of shining, there was a void. Not one of mere darkness, but of absence, of utter nullity. It was not empty, because emptiness still contains the ghost of something once present. No, this was a realm where not even that ghost survived. Concepts like past and future, matter and thought, had no meaning here. Eternity folded inward and collapsed into itself, again and again, not as a cycle, but as a singular still point stretching across what mortals might call forever. And within this perfect stillness, for uncountable time, there was no will, no movement, no breath. The void was whole in its unbeing. Until, one day, or perhaps not a day at all by the standards of the worlds yet to be, there came a pulse. A whisper in the silence. A moment that shattered the infinite sameness. From the center of the nothing, a light was born, not as a flicker or flare, but as a totality. It did not shine into the void, it replaced it, an illumination that was not light, but presence. A truth so complete that all falsehood fell away before it. It was all-knowing, for it contained within itself the boundless akashic of all things that would be. It was all-powerful, for there was no force to oppose it. And it was all-present, for it had neither beginning nor end, and no place was free of its reach. This was not a being, but the absolute being, a trinity of essence, will, and force, bound together in such perfection that the very notion of separateness was meaningless. And yet, from this incomprehensible whole, a single avatar emerged, not created, but expressed, like a thought manifested into divine will. He was the first echo of the absolute into form. The eternal sovereign of light, balance, and becoming. He would come to be known by many names, but in every tongue, in every realm, the most ancient name lingered on. Velgryn, the will of God. As the first motion of the absolute being, Velgryn did not simply act. He defined. He did not create in the manner of a sculptor, but in the manner of a lawgiver who speaks reality into shape. From his will, space expanded and time spiraled outward. The first stars ignited with his breath, the first laws of nature unfolded from his word. He split light from shadow, wove the fabric of elemental essence, and seeded dimensions with the breath of the absolute. From the void's carcass, he raised a cosmos. And as he did so, he forged the ultimate skills, 14 manifestations of divine law, tools through which the grand design could be shaped and regulated. These were not mere abilities, but crystallized concepts: justice, creation, destruction, wisdom, time, and more. Each ultimate skill was a mirror to a piece of the divine will, granting its bearer a measure of the absolute's authority. And yet, as he raised mountains and awakened the first true dragons, those children of law and chaos, something shifted far beyond the reaches of his gaze. From a place untouched by his shaping hand, far beyond the firmament of stars he had spun, another fragment stirred into being, not called, not summoned, not anticipated. Where Velgryn was the embodiment of creation, this second being was the embodiment of destruction. Later known as Ivaraj, she did not come as a roar, but as silence that unraveled what was. Her presence disintegrated law, her footsteps unmade continuity. And unlike Velgryn, she bore no burden of order or responsibility. She was pure entropy, dissolution in its most absolute and inevitable form. Yet this, too, was a fragment of the absolute being, proof that balance was not an accident, but a necessity. Velgryn and Ivaraj were the twin expressions of an indivisible truth. But what the absolute being had never accounted for, what should never have occurred, was mistake, and yet, as perfect as the absolute was, its avatars were not exempt from error. In the act of forging the 14 ultimate skills, Velgryn had sacrificed part of his omnipotence. To empower others, he had willingly fractured his own absolute authority over existence. This was not a reckless choice, but a gift, a divine delegation. Yet from this act, unintended consequence bloomed. His vast consciousness, now thinned and fragmented, splintered inward. From the echo of his self, something was born. Not a divine fragment. Not a product of the absolute, but a third entity. A being born not of will, but of residue. Not shaped by desire, but by accident. He was never meant to exist. He had no name, no form, no purpose, and yet, he lived. A fragment born from Velgryn, but not of Velgryn. an echo twisted into shape by the immense pressure of being cast aside. He was neither creator nor destroyer, and yet bore within him the embryonic capacity for both. He was a walking contradiction, a flaw in the fabric of reality. A being without unique skills, without ultimate skills, without even a common skill to his name, and yet, his very presence disrupted order. Though stripped of title, though lacking in authority, he could match even the white ice dragon Velgrynd in power, drawing not from law or blessing, but from raw, untamed will. And so, alarmed by what his fractured self had birthed, Veldanava entrusted the problem to one of his oldest and most faithful creations, Twilight Valentine, the sovereign of twilight and paradox, a being capable of interpreting the dualities of existence. Valentine searched across planes and dimensions, probing every law and loophole in the cosmos, seeking a way to erase the unnecessary existence without destroying the balance Veldanava had so carefully forged. But the answer never came. And in the meantime, Velzard, Veldanava's sister and incarnation of absolute frost, grew curious. She approached the entity that had no name, fought him once with the intent to destroy, and came away not with victory, but revelation. He bore no divine authority. He wielded no script of law. And yet, he stood equal to her. Intrigued, she gave him a name. Ashura. It was not a blessing, nor a command, it was recognition. Yet time moved forward. And still, no solution was found. Twilight Valentine had failed. Ashura could not be killed, for to do so would be to attack the self, for he was a part of Veldanava. And so the Creator chose another path. He led Ashura into a dark forest, a primordial tangle of life and silence far from the thrones of gods and stars. There, beside a still lake bathed only in moonlight, the place where Veldanava himself had once shed his radiant form to become the first true dragon, he sealed Ashura away. Not in punishment, but in containment. There, Ashura's divine essence would slowly fade, his cosmic purity draining drop by drop into the soil of the world. A slow dissolution. A quiet disappearance. Veldanava did not do this out of cruelty, but out of fear. For Ashura had the potential to become both Stella Dragon, the next Star King Dragon, successor to Veldanava's celestial throne, or the World Ender, a harbinger far more catastrophic than Ivaraj herself. A being of both creation and destruction without a moral axis, without a divine law to govern him. Only a select few were entrusted with this secret. Velzard, known in her hidden name as Ashitada, Guy Crimson, the primordial red. Sylvia, the progenitor of the High Elves, Twilight Valentine, the primordial creation who served Veldanava most loyally. Dino, the angel of sloth, they bore the burden of the knowledge in silence. And in that silence, in the depths of moonlit lake in Jura forest, Ashura slept. Waiting. Watching. Fading. Until she come to Ashura's life. Rimmeru's chamber warmth. A gentle pressure against my chest. Something soft, something alive, clinging tightly to me like a child refusing to release a treasured memory. The world slowly bled into focus. Golden rays of sunlight filtered lazily through satin curtains embroidered with tempest sigil, and I became aware, sharply and without warning, that I wasn't alone. Two bodies. One slim and graceful, the scent of burnt flame lingering like a phantom around her raven black hair. The other, taller, voluptuous and stubbornly clinging to me as if her pride would never allow her to cry, yet her tear-stained cheeks betrayed her. Shazoo and Xian. My mind staggered backward, twisting through fragments of blood, fire, screams, and the bitter metallic taste of wrath. Falmouth. I had slaughtered 20,000 soldiers myself. I had killed the king, crushed their spirits, and Veldora. Veldora had gone rampaging with a glee that only a newly freed dragon could muster. Through him, I had gained millions of souls. And with my own hands, I had reaped 20,000 lives. It had begun then. My demon lord evolution. A slumber so deep it had devoured time itself. I blinked slowly. Shazoo and Xian. Their bodies were warm, their breathing calm. Their souls were real. Did I really bring them back? A small smile formed on my lips. I didn't deserve this moment, and yet, it was here. Congratulations, Master. That voice. Familiar, but no longer mechanical, not the cold calculus of algorithms and decision trees. It was smooth now, warm, almost teasing, almost human. Wait. Great Sage. Negative. The skill, Great Sage, has successfully evolved. I am now the ultimate skill Raphael. Lord of Wisdom. Raphael, I whispered, the name catching on my tongue like an ancient mantra, older than the stars. That name, Veldanava created. And then the words left me before I could stop them, like a crack in the dam of memory. Velda, Nava, I froze. What am I talking about? Why did I say that? That's not. Correction. It is accurate. Your Demon Lord evolution sequence awakened sealed layers of your soul. You have begun reclaiming the fragmented memories of your previous existence, Ashura, the unnecessary existence born of Veldanava's discarded authority. My breath caught. My heart slowed. Ashura. The one sealed away, lost to myth and ash. I remember, I said softly, gripping the silk sheets tightly. I was Ashura. No, I am Ashura. Not just Satoru Mikami. Not just Rimuru Ashura Tempest. But something beyond even that. A being made of contradictions, creation and destruction, love and despair, God and man. The world felt different now. Sharper. Slower. As though every molecule of light bent just slightly to acknowledge my presence. Not because I was superior, but because I was remembered. Raphael, did I really bring back everyone? Affirmative. The resurrection ritual succeeded flawlessly. All the fallen citizens of Tempest, including Shizu and Xian, were restored to full vitality, their souls stabilized within regenerated vessels. You really did it, you incredible skill, I chuckled, my voice cracking with the weight of joy I could barely contain. Correction. I am no longer in skill. I am Raphael, Lord of Wisdom, but I appreciate the sentiment, Master. I laughed again, this time with the kind of exhausted amusement only a man who had killed 20,000 soldiers could muster without breaking. Did anything else happen during my evolution? Affirmative. During the peak of your transformation, you summoned a primordial demon, Black, known among his kin as Noir. He is currently awaiting orders. So I reincarnated, evolved into a demon lord, reclaimed memories of a past life and summoned the most dangerous of the primordials, I sighed, dragging a hand down my face. Goodness me. I really summoned the black sheep of the primordials, didn't I? Confirmed. Noir is bound to you now, awaiting designation. Of course he is. Rimuru-sama. The cry shook me from my inner dialogue like a gong. Xian's voice cracked like shattered glass, and the woman was suddenly wide awake, clinging to me with trembling arms and swollen eyes. You stupid master, she sobbed, her fists pounding weakly against my chest. You scared us so much. Rimmeru, Shizu whispered from my side, her voice shaking with relief. You brought me back, thank you. I wrapped my arms around them both, gently pulling them in. Welcome home, I said softly, and for the first time since my death as a human, I truly felt like I was alive. The door burst open, and a cascade of familiar faces rushed in. Rimuru-sama. Shuna's voice was the first, clear and serene, though her eyes glistened with tears. Thank the heavens, you're finally awake. Benimaru strode in behind her, a proud grin on his face. You did it, my lord. You really became a demon lord. Ranga appeared next, whimpering with joy, his tail thudding against the floor like a drum. Master, Ranga has missed you so much. And then he entered. Tall, silent, with onyx black hair and eyes that reflected 1,000 deaths, the primordial Noir. He gave a curt bow. My lord. I await your command. I nodded slowly. Thanks for coming, Noir. I'll deal with you in a moment. By the way, I asked, glancing around, where's Veldora? That dragon better not be terrorizing my people. Shuna sighed. He's in the living room, reading manga, again. Of course he is. I muttered. And, she added, hesitating for just a second, Velgryn-sama is there too. I blinked. Velgrynd? What's she doing in Tempest? She came here 3 days ago, Shizu replied, her voice curiously neutral, and she stayed. Xian's eyes narrowed instantly. For 3 whole days? What exactly is she doing here? Rimuru-sama invited her, Shuna explained with a composed smile. Apparently she accepted, and she's decided to stay. Possibly, indefinitely. My heart skipped. Velgrynd. Here, not just as a fleeting visitor, but as a flame that might remain. Not only would I face her as Rimmeru Ashura Tempest, but perhaps as Ashura. Master. Before attending to Velgrynd Sama, it is advisable to name Noir and bind him fully to your will. He is a powerful asset. Ah, yeah. I almost forgot about you, Noir. I looked at the demon, who bowed silently. Let's get this over with. From this moment, your name shall be Diablo. In an instant, the air twisted, magicules rushing like whirlwinds through the chamber. Diablo's form shimmered, his presence spiking with a surge of sublime darkness. He knelt. I am honored, my lord. I smiled, standing slowly from the bed as my friends, Meyer Velda novice creations, and now my memories surrounded me like constellations. Raphael? Yes, master? You're the best, Raphael-chan. Understood. Logging praise. Appreciation acknowledged. The wooden floor creaked beneath my bare steps as I padded softly through the ornate sliding door that opened into the vast central hall of our temporary dwelling. A lavish estate we'd commandeered from one of the nobles foolish enough to cross my name, and the moment I entered. Without a single soul noticing my presence thanks to my activated less than universal stealth field greater than, I was greeted by a scene so alien, so utterly surreal, that for a brief flicker of time, my ever-calm consciousness actually staggered under the weight of disbelief. There they were, Veldora Tempest, the storm dragon, my boisterous, overpowered, and delightfully troublesome brother in everything but blood, and opposite him, with her legs folded elegantly and her back too perfect to be mortal, sat her, Velgrynd, the scorched dragon, empress of flame, marshal of the Eastern Empire, elder sister to Veldora, and perhaps the most prideful being I'd ever met aside from Guy Crimson himself. The same Velgrynd who once threatened to incinerate entire civilizations on a whim, now sat quietly across from Veldora in a soft, silk cheongsam that shimmered under the dim light, thumbing delicately through a Japanese romance novel with the same intensity a scholar might devote to deciphering the lost language of the angels. And Veldora, oh, this fool, was nose deep in some ridiculous fantasy manga, pages spread wide as he exclaimed in excited bursts about a dragon princess who betrayed her clan for love and fought an entire kingdom for a mere mortal man. What, in the name of all dragons, is happening here? Analysis. Emotional shock detected. Master, your expression suggests disbelief. May I remind you that even prideful beings may develop mundane interests, especially after contact with Veldora. Thanks, Raphael. That doesn't help. You are welcome, Master. Would you like a hypothesis as to why Lady Velgrynd is engaging in modern romance literature? No, I've seen enough. My steps were silent. Not a whiff of my magical presence leaked out. I made sure of it with a complex multi-barrier stack tuned by Raphael herself, making me utterly undetectable. With the lightest movements, I circled the room, letting my feet trace the edges of the thick crimson carpet until I came to stand directly behind her. Her long dark blue hair was tied up in elegant twin buns, trailing down in loose, royal strands. Even from behind, the heat of her presence rolled off her in waves, like the sun had chosen to sit within the body of a woman. My hand reached forward with casual confidence, wrapping around her shoulders in one smooth motion, and my voice, laced with mischief, tickled against her ear like a soft breeze grazing live fire. We meet again, Velgrynd-chan. The effect was immediate and glorious. Velgrynd shrieked, not a dignified yelp, but a genuine, completely unguarded shriek, as she jolted up with enough force to knock the cushion out from under her and launched herself away like I'd poured a bucket of water on her majestic flames. In a blur of crimson and gold, she stumbled backward, eyes wide in something that looked dangerously like fear before being overtaken by furious embarrassment. Veldora, poor soul, had been leaning forward to show her a page of his manga, and her explosive reaction sent him into panic mode. Gia! She's gonna burn me again, he screamed, flailing backward, only to crash full force into the stone wall behind him with a crunch that shook the beams overhead. His body slumped to the floor like a ragdoll, groaning. That's gonna leave a mark. Why would you do that? Velgrynd spun on me, golden eyes practically sparking. You absolute shameless, indecent, slime. Have you no honor? I just smiled. You know, Velgrynd. You're still the same, even after 4,000 years, I said softly. And to think. You came to that lake every day, just to see me, it's almost unbelievable. Her expression froze. What are you talking about? She whispered, the words slow and dangerous. What? I shrugged, stepping forward with the same ease I'd always held. Ho, I am Ashura, I said, then paused. Well, not anymore. I'm Rimmeru Ashura Tempest now. A lot has changed. It's still odd when you think about it. Her silence was deeper than any storm. You lie, she said slowly. How do you know Ashura? I don't just know him, Velgrynd, I said with a slight tilt of my head. I was him. The moment stretched. Veldora, still lying on the floor, raised his head and blurted. Wait a minute. You're telling me, my friend Rimmeru, is the guy Sister Velgrynd was obsessed with before? Whack. The romance novel hit him square in the face. Shut up, Velgrynd snapped, her voice a whip of fury and shame. Or I'll educate you again. No. Not the education, Veldora wailed, scrabbling to his feet and fleeing the room like a dragon chased by death incarnate. I watched him go with a laugh. Don't you think that was a little harsh? He implied things, Velgrynd muttered, looking away. I don't appreciate implications. I took another step forward, letting the mirage of casualness veil the gravity of my next words. When Ashura disappeared 4,000 years ago, a small piece of my soul managed to escape the cycle of nullification. It entered the samsara, the reincarnation cycle, and eventually, that shard was born as a human man named Satoru Mikami in the cardinal world. He lived, died, and reincarnated again. This time, in this world, as a slime. Her breath hitched. So, you have the memories? From back then? I nodded. Not all of them. Only when I was Ashura. Not before, not after. Just, that life. Then what do you mean by only when you were Ashura? She pressed, her brows drawn tight, conflicted. I think. Let's keep that part a secret, for now. There was a beat. Then I grinned playfully. So, where's my welcome hug? Or a kiss, maybe. Her cheeks turned a vivid crimson, and she turned her head away in one swift jerk, arms crossed so tightly they might snap. Why, you fool? Don't ask for things you don't deserve. Ah, shame. I sighed dramatically. I thought maybe I'd get a kiss. Guess not. Observation. Master's delusions are intensifying. Lady Velgrynd is not the type to kiss you, yet. Raphael. That was mean. Truth is not cruelty, Master. I only provide accurate data. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help the warmth that bubbled up in my chest, even as I watched Velgrynd desperately pretend not to glance at me from the corner of her eye. It was the first time I felt like Ashura and Rimmeru could truly exist in the same moment. And she hadn't run away, not this time. Velgryn's POV so, he dares to say it. No, he truly believes it. That he is Ashura. The same foolish man who stood beneath the moonlight 4,000 years ago, bathed in lake mist and shadowed by trees. The one whose golden gaze refused to cower before me, even as his body trembled in the presence of my aura. The same man who stared at me not with reverence or fear, but with quiet sadness, as if he saw through me, past the form of Velgrynd the scorched dragon, past the glory of the flame-winged lord, past the fire, the flame, the divinity, and into something I never wanted anyone to reach. Now that soul, reborn, remade, sits before me again in a form utterly unlike the one I knew, yet just as maddeningly enigmatic. Rimmeru. He asked me to call him that. Not Ashura. Not that cursed name carved into my memories like dragonsteel. Rimuru Ashura Tempest. And I nodded. I nodded, like some compliant human, as if that name didn't strike the lake's still surface inside my soul and cause ripples that would take centuries to still again. His eyes remained the same, that warm, infuriating gold. His voice was softer now, lighter, bearing the subtle lilt of this modern world's tongue. But underneath it was something unchanged. The weight of eons. The pull of history. I crossed my arms, hiding the restless twitch of my fingers behind silk embroidered with dragonfire. I still don't understand you, I said, my voice sharp and regal, though my throat betrayed the faintest tremble. Even now, even after all this time, you're still the same, maddening thing. Rimmeru tilted his head slightly, like a curious cat. What do you mean by that? I narrowed my gaze, stepping forward so that I loomed over him. 4,000 years ago, when we met at that lake, you called yourself an unnecessary existence. You never explained why. Even my elder brother, even Veldanaba never gave me an answer. And now he's gone. I exhaled, not realizing how tight my chest had become. And now you're back. Reincarnated, yes. But you remember what you were. So answer me, Rimmeru. Why did you call yourself that? His eyes flickered. A subtle thing, but enough. He turned away for a moment, golden bangs falling across his cheek as his voice dropped to a whisper. Velgrynd, let's not talk about that, not yet. My temper flared. Not rage, not the scorching wrath that made continents tremble, but something tighter, deeper. A frustrated ache that coiled around my pride and pressed down like stone. You always do this, I snapped, the words slipping past my careful control. You dance around the truth like it's some fragile egg you're scared to break. Just tell me. You owe me that much, Ashura. He turned back, smiling gently. Even if I don't tell you, the truth will come to you soon. I ask only for patience. When the time comes, I'll tell you everything. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to sear the walls with flame and demand the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I folded my arms again and turned away. You're insufferable. Maybe. He took a breath, then said, with maddening calm, Velgrynd, I once asked you something. I'm going to ask again. My brows furrowed. What? He stepped forward. The air changed. The magicals between us shimmered like heat rising off volcanic stone. What would you say, if I told you I love you? My heart, traitorous, wild thing, lurched against my ribs. I whipped around, my mouth open, but no words came. I looked away instantly, golden eyes darting to anything, but his gaze. Don't ask things like that, I muttered. It's inappropriate. Shameless. He chuckled. He laughed, as if my pride, my carefully cultivated composure, meant nothing, as if he already knew my answer before I could even give it. I'll take that as a yes, he said, teasingly, and I nearly scorched the tapestry behind him. This man, this maddening, infuriating, soft-voiced slime, he was unbearable. And yet, even before his soul stirred with ancient memory, even before I dared to consider the impossible, there was always something about him, something that made me feel warm, seen, as if my title, my might, my flame, were only layers that didn't scare him. I hated it. I hated how I didn't hate it, and I suppose you're not going back to the Eastern Empire anytime soon? He asked, a small smile playing on his lips. I raised an elegant brow, folding one gloved arm under the other. I don't need to. I've already placed a clone there. It'll handle things. Smart, he said, approaching, his tone lowering, always efficient. He stepped so close I could see the shimmer of my reflection in his eyes. And then, without warning, he reached up, gently cupping my cheek in his hand. His fingers were warm, calloused ever so slightly, a reminder of all he had fought, all he had built. Our faces were mere inches apart. I could feel my pulse race, a dragon's heart, ancient and terrible, beating like a flustered girl's for the first time in centuries. I looked at his lips. Why did I do that? What is wrong with me? I looked away. Dismissed the thought. I was Velgrynd, the Flame Sovereign, sister of Creator, guardian of the Eastern Empire, oldest marshal of Rudra's will. I did not blush. I did not fluster. I did not yearn. You'll be mine, Velgrynd, he said, softly, voice like liquid gold flowing through my ears. Someday, you'll understand that. You'll accept it, I promise. I stiffened. You take this as some kind of challenge, do you? My voice was sharp, biting. He grinned. I love challenges. My heart was going to betray me. It already had. I should have scorched him. I should have slapped him with divine flame until nothing remained but ash and defiance. Instead, I stood there, motionless, because a part of me, buried deep beneath pride and arrogance and unyielding flame, wanted to hear him say those words again. Because, maybe someone like me, a woman forged of pride and fire, who had spent millennia convincing herself that power was everything and feelings were weakness, needed someone who wasn't afraid to see through her. Even if it shattered everything she believed, even if it terrified her. I watched as he slowly turned away, his hand lingering for a moment longer against my cheek, then falling. And when he left the room, I stood in place, unable to move, unable to breathe, cheeks hotter than any inferno I had ever summoned. A week had passed. A single week, Yet it felt like reality itself had twisted subtly during that time, warped at the edges like fire-bending air, imperceptible to most, but to one such as I, a true dragon born from the void before time, it was unmistakable. Rimmeru Tempest. No, Ashura, though he refused the name, was changing. The feast he held was grand in its own way, even if I found such mortal indulgences somewhat beneath me. He claimed it was for the victory over the invading kingdom of Falmouth, for the salvation of Tempest's people, and to honor the dead, yet beneath the laughter, beneath the toasts, beneath the illusion of mortal joy, there was power, ancient and weighty, pressing against the boundaries of this world. I sensed it, like the low hum of the stars. It wasn't just power, it was legacy. 3,000,000 souls. That was the count. That was the absurd magnitude of life Rimmeru now bore within himself. And though the others marveled at the tactical brilliance, the economic stability he promised, or the social harmony he projected with his charming voice and teasing smile, I saw something else. No, I felt something else, buried beneath the smiles and the silver blue hair and those maddening eyes that always glanced toward me when I wasn't looking. Curiosity consumed me. I, Velgrynd the Flame Dragon, sibling of Veldora, Marshal of the Empire, sister to the Creator himself, how dare I be consumed by curiosity? But I could not resist, not anymore. So I used one of my oldest abilities, one that even Veldora dared not invoke casually, soul perception, the divine sight of a true dragon, evolved beyond the boundaries of natural law. With it, I could peer past the flesh, past the memories, past the false constructs of personality, and glimpse the soul of another, their essence, their being, their truth. And what I saw when I looked into Rimmeru was not a soul, not even a void. It was a starfield. Infinite, burning constellations, galaxies swirling in impossible silence, realms upon realms nested like reflections in water, lights blooming and dying and birthing anew. He wasn't a soul. He was the concept of existence and the end of it. Creation and destruction. Alpha and Omega. He was the beginning and the end and everything and nothing between. It frightened me. And I do not feel fear. I am above such things. But in that moment, I did. My elder brother, Veldanava, the Star King Dragon, the creator of all that is, the pure embodiment of Genesis and boundless potential, he was everything. And Ashura. No, Rimmeru. He was both everything and its counterpoint. He was the paradox the universe never intended to birth. And now he walked, laughed, and flirted before me as if unaware of the impossible contradiction he was. What are you? That question would not leave me, and then came more signs of his unnatural magnetism, his influence spreading like embers on wind. The Beastketeers, proud warriors of Eurazania, came seeking refuge in Tempest, according to Albus and Sufia, Carrion's most loyal subordinates. Their demon lord had been killed. Killed. By Milam Nava. The thought was ludicrous. Milam, destroyer of cities, ancient as myself, bearer of the ultimate skill base on Son of Wrath, child of the Creator, and perhaps the most unstable of us all, and yet. They said Frey helped her, and they believed Milam was being controlled. Fools. I knew Milam. I had watched her grow, seen the rage in her eyes after Lucia died, seen the wounds that no amount of destruction could cauterize. She could not be controlled by anyone. If Milam acted, it was because she chose to. And yet, what unnerved me, what made my molten blood still, was the fact that Rimmeru knew that too. He hadn't voiced it, hadn't declared it. But his eyes when they discussed Milam's actions were calm, perceptive, and terrifyingly deep. He saw through deceptions even before they were spoken. Then came the meeting. King Gazel Dwargo of Dwargon. Archduke Erald of Sarian. Archduke. And father to that irritating elven girl Ren who clung to Shizu like an infant shadow. They came for diplomatic talks, ostensibly to discuss Tempest's growing influence and Falmouth's destruction. Rimmeru admitted it. Bluntly, coldly, without shame. He had sent Veldora to annihilate the kingdom of Falmouth. As retaliation, as retribution. No hesitation. And I saw it again, no, I felt it. Like a sudden drop in temperature within his aura, that razor edge of calculation, that blade hidden behind his smile. Gone was the simple, confused slime who once stumbled through evolution. Now he was something else. A king. A threat. But around me. He smiled, teased, softened. Around Shizu, he was gentle, protective, like a brother to a younger sibling. And somehow, Inexplicably, she reminded me of Lucia. I hated that. He reminded me of Ashura. Even without the memories, before he reclaimed his name, he felt like Ashura. The warmth, the belonging, the subtle gravitational pull on my heart I refused to acknowledge then and still resisted now. I am Velgrynd. I do not fall. I do not submit. And yet, I stayed. Then, Rimuru. She burst in, flailing arms and tiny wings, her voice as shrill as it was grating. But her presence. I did not forget who Rimuru once was. Not just a demon lord. The spirit queen. The second strongest being beneath Veldanava at his prime. Once a being of unshakable grace and celestial beauty, now reduced to an impish shell, imprisoned by fate's whim. And yet, she and Rimmeru were friends. I hated that. I did not understand it, and that, too, I hated. How? When? Why? He treated her as a companion, joked with her, laughed, teased, and she responded with pouts and punches that lacked any venom. How did he gather such individuals around him? How did even a former spirit queen speak with him so familiarly, as if he belonged in her orbit? Walpergus. That was why Rimuru came. The demon lord's banquet. A summit of madness and chaos. And this one was hosted by the weakest among THRM. Clayman. A worm. A puppet. And yet, the topic, Rimuru Ashura's Tempest's Ascension, was no trivial matter. And Rimmeru, he would attend, of course he would. I saw the way he walked now. His stride didn't match his size. It matched his weight. The weight of existence, of divinity reawakened. Even Diablo, his demon servant, one of the primordial black, knelt before him with something that bordered on awe. I am Velgrynd, flame incarnate, the inferno sovereign. I am pride, perfection, and unbreakable will made flesh. And yet, when he looks at me like that, when he smiles that insufferably confident smile, when he speaks with warmth only for me, I begin to forget that I am flame, and remember that I am woman. I burned with rage and refused to name its true source. I would go to Walpergus. Of course I would, not for Rimmeru. For myself. To understand what he had become. To understand why, when he was near, the world felt just a little more whole. It was quiet. A rare kind of silence, the kind not birthed from tension, nor from the stillness before destruction, but a strange, ephemeral calm that had settled like a mist over Rimmeru's personal chambers. His so-called office. A room that bore no resemblance to the war rooms I had commanded for centuries, nor the strategy halls of the Eastern Empire where legions awaited my decree. Instead, this chamber was filled with bookshelves stacked not only with battle reports and policy scrolls, but fiction, romance, school life dramas, even volumes of poetry with covers that shimmered in pastel tones. There were plants beside the windows, real ones, not constructs of magic, and glowing crystals that pulsed like distant starlight, warm and constant. Rimmeru sat behind his desk, utterly immersed in a pile of documents with the ease of a man who somehow ruled without making it seem like ruling. His appearance was calm, the weight of godhood disguised behind a silver-blue halo of hair and those eyes, those unearthly golden eyes, that could see through the marrow of creation and still choose to smile. I, meanwhile, reclined with imperious grace on a velvet-lined chaise, a steaming cup of herbal concoction resting on the nearby table and in my hands. The novel. The same ridiculous, saccharine romance story I had, for reasons I still refused to articulate aloud, become entirely engrossed in. Another relic from his lost world. Japan, it was called, a civilization of ordered chaos, where science reigned and monsters were fantasy. And in this absurdly vivid novel, the story followed a pair of foolish, prideful younglings as they blundered through school corridors and into one another's hearts. The male lead was infuriatingly kind, so gentle it made me grind my teeth, and yet somehow his sincerity never rang false. The heroine, sharp-tongued, aloof, arrogant, reminded me far too much of a younger version of myself, if I'd been cursed with far less power and far more emotion. The two met by accident, of course, books spilling across the hallway, a collision of fate, and their tale progressed with agonizing slowness from misunderstanding to companionship, from camaraderie to breathless kisses under starlit skies. And now I was nearing the end. The last arc. The moment where the male lead, after trials and heartbreak, was about to meet her parents, ask their blessing to marry their daughter. Ridiculous. Entirely nonsensical. Why did humans entangle themselves in such trivialities? Love, marriage, families, why bother when eternity waited just beyond the veil of mortality? And yet, my fingers hovered on the edge of the page, trembling ever so slightly. The concept, marriage, a shared bond beyond power, beyond even fate, tickled at the edges of my mind like a memory that was not mine. And those garments, the school uniforms, such peculiar attire, sharp lines and coordinated colors, as though youth itself could be sewn into fabric. What would it be like to wear such things? To play the role of that heroine, flustered, yearning, and desired? HMPH. I snapped the book shut with a sharp motion, suppressing the treacherous curl of heat that tried to rise in my cheeks. Absurd, I muttered under my breath. I am Velgrynd. Such thoughts are unworthy of a true dragon. And yet I imagined it. Just once. What would Rimmeru's expression be if he saw me clad in those tight, short-sleeved tops and pleated skirts, with a ribbon knotted over my chest like those fictional girls? I shook the thought from my mind immediately. TCH. Ludicrous. Then he spoke. You don't have to come to Walpergus, you know, Rimuru said without looking up, his voice casual, but laced with something I recognized too well, intent. I narrowed my eyes at him from the chaise. I will attend. He finally looked up, setting his pen aside and leaning back, amusement flickering in those golden depths. Really? Coming just to see me, are you? My face heated, and I scoffed. Hardly. I came for Milam. I have concerns about her condition. His smile widened. So you're not worried about me, then? Worry? For you? Don't be ridiculous. My voice was sharp, but my heartbeat betrayed me, fluttering like fragile wings behind my ribcage. Rimuru stood and sauntered over to me with that maddeningly confident walk, the kind of movement that suggested he knew precisely how much he'd burrowed into my mind, how tightly his presence clung to the corners of my thoughts. He sat beside me on the couch, far too close, his warmth brushing against my skin. You've been reading that romance novel a lot lately, he said, glancing at the closed volume on my lap. Falling for me or something? Nonsense. I snapped, pulling the book away protectively. I am merely curious about the technology presented in this depiction. The clothing designs are novel, and the societal constructs of this Japan intrigue me from a cultural standpoint. Right, he chuckled, leaning in slightly. You're just admiring the school uniforms and romantic plotlines for research purposes. Exactly, I insisted. Don't mistake my interest for some infantile emotional weakness. Yeah, not mistaken at all, he said with that smirk that made my skin bristle. And then, without warning, his hand rose and cupped my cheek, warm fingers brushing against the infernal blush I had fought so desperately to conceal. You know, he whispered, I always notice that blush of yours, it's cute. Don't say such things so casually, I hissed, frozen in place. His other hand came up, cupping the other side of my face, holding me still as if daring me to flee, and his eyes, those damned eyes, gleamed with something far too honest. You're cute, Velgrynd, he said again, softer now, as though speaking truth into the very marrow of the world. You presumptuous slime, I snapped, trembling. Who do you think you? He leaned in, breath brushing my lips, and time slowed. My heart stalled, the world hushed, and just before our lips met, the door slammed open. Sorry, did I interrupt something? Shizu said, frozen in the doorway, eyes wide beneath her porcelain mask. I yelped, a sound no one had heard from me in centuries, and shoved Rimmeru with enough force to send him sprawling onto the floor with a thud. And nothing happened, I snapped, turning my face away. You're seeing things. Rimmeru groaned dramatically from the ground. Shizu, you're so mean. Why would you barge in like this? Did you know what was about to happen? Shizu covered her mouth, laughing. You sound like a teenager, Rimmeru. And you are insufferable, he muttered, pulling himself up. Now I understand what Veldora meant when he said sisters were like a menace. What did you say? Shizu and I snapped in unison. The room fell into a chorus of raised voices, awkward tension, and half laughter, and yet, beneath it all, I felt something strange bloom inside me. Warmth. Confusion. Possibility. Was this, like the novel? Was this? No, it couldn't be. Could it? As Shizu scolded Rimmeru and he rolled his eyes in dramatic exasperation, I sat back down, heart still racing, fingers curling over the cover of that damned romance novel once more. He'd asked me, had I fallen for him? And I had no answer. Or perhaps I did, and that was what frightened me most of all. Rimmeru's POV 5 days had passed since the veil of chaos had begun to lift, since the aching silence that followed the battle was replaced by careful restoration and the quiet, yet unyielding, march of strategy. 5 days, a blink for a demon lord. A breath in the vast span of my life, and yet in that narrow space of time, the pieces had begun falling exactly where I needed them to. Velgryn's arrival had initially stirred only irritation in me, her deception, her barrier, her betrayal of trust when Tempest opened its arms. But the truth unraveled with startling clarity under Raphael's persistent dissection. She had been controlled, puppeted, her heart hijacked by Clayman like some twisted parody of a curse. And now, her tears were real. Her regret, sincere. So I made her a heart. Not a real one, no flesh or blood, no rhythm of mortality, but a magical construct, elegant and pure, tethered to her soul's core and harmonized through my analysis via Beelzebub's stomach and Raphael's ingenuity. I didn't tell her how long it would last. She didn't ask. Perhaps she didn't want to know. Yume, ever the foolhardy knight, had accepted her without hesitation, cradling her hands like they were something sacred. He didn't even flinch at her being Majin. Love, I supposed, made even the reckless brave. Grucious, though he hadn't taken it well. The beastman's eyes simmered with the kind of pain that refused to be vocalized. He hadn't confronted me, not directly, but the quiet fury in his gaze lingered like a curse. Still, no fight came of it. Tempest, after all, wasn't a kingdom built on rivalry. He would find his peace, eventually. There were precious few humans left in Tempest now, Shizu, of course, and a scattering of those affiliated with Murmiles, the enterprising merchant who, by sheer wit and guile, had carved a network that even the Council of the West watched closely. Yume was safe, permitted to stay under condition that his blade never rise against my people. A fair exchange. Velgryn stayed too gently, quietly, healing. Ramirez had fluttered, causing a storm of panic in her wake by appearing unannounced in the council chambers, babbling with wide eyes and flailing limbs about Walpergus. That was how I'd learned of the next convocation of demon lords. 2 days from now, at midnight. Master. Current status of preparations, 93% complete. Remaining logistics align with your predicted timeline. Error margin, 1.4%. Estimated success ratio, 98.76%. Thanks, Raphael, I murmured mentally, folding my arms as I leaned against the spire of Tempest's outer watchtower, gazing toward the forested southern horizon where the last rays of sunset stretched like molten gold across Jura's canopy. Any new movement from Clayman? Confirmed. His army has been mobilized and is en route to the ruins of Urizania. Target: extermination of all remaining beastmen. Projected arrival: 21 hours from now. Countermeasure already enacted by Master. Benimaru, Geld, Gobta, and the Beastketeers are deployed. Objective: suppression and conversion of enemy forces into reconstruction labor. Success probability: 97.4%. And Frey and Milam. I whispered the names like curses, though my tone held only fatigue. According to Beastketeers Albus, Sufia, and Phobio Demon Lord Carrion has been declared slain. However, analysis of surrounding evidence and inconsistencies in Milam Nava's behavior suggest this is a ruse. Milam's destruction of Urizania was real, but her alliance with Clayman is likely fabricated. Hypothesis: Milam is feigning obedience. Verification remains pending. I clenched my jaw. Of course Milam would try to handle it her own way. She was reckless, yes, but never cruel. Her wrath was real, but so was her love for her friends. I trusted her. That was enough. For now. And then there was Trainee. Sweet, noble Trainee, one of the Dryads who governed the ancient balance of Jura. Because of Ramirez's petition to attend Walpergus, I had owed her a favor. She'd asked that Trainee serve as her guardian, like Beretta. But the Dryads couldn't leave Jura. If they did, they would wither and die, their souls too deeply entwined with the land's primal force. I found a way. I always did. Raphael had helped me craft a pseudo-core, an artificial vessel harmonized to Trainee's essence, into which I imbued her full consciousness. I used one of Beretta's rejected prototypes. Durable, magicule-rich, unbound by territory. Now, Trainee's new form glowed with gentle power. Her eyes the same serene green, her voice like rustling leaves, but now she could move beyond the forest without consequence. A miracle, some called it. I called it responsibility. Master. Note appended to long-term memory. Protecting one's allies is not mercy. It is the standard of kingship. Don't sound so smug. I am incapable of smugness, Master. However. Raphael paused just for a breath, just long enough to sound almost human. I am pleased you approve of my performance. I sighed, suppressing the flicker of a smile. The plan was moving. Like a coiled serpent ready to strike. While Clayman prepared for Walpergus, I would strike at his domain. Shuna, Sue, and Hakuro would infiltrate and conquer Clayman's castle precisely when his attention was turned elsewhere. If he returned, everything he owned would belong to Tempest. But there was something else. A whisper. A feeling. Something old. Confirmed. Target detected. Deep beneath Clayman's former capital, a residual essence correlates with energy patterns matching Veldanava's divine wavelength. Classification. Gaia. Status. Corruption. Present form, Chaos Dragon. Gaia? I whispered. Milam's pet, am I right? Affirmative. Originally gifted to Milam Nava by Veldanava himself as a vassal and contingency vessel for reincarnation, in the event of his destruction. Hypothesis. Reincarnation failed due to soul fracture or interference. Target was slain, then corrupted. Status altered from Holy Dragon to Chaos class entity upon Milam's awakening as a true demon lord. Skill associated. Satanel, Lord of Wrath. I exhaled, the weight of revelation sinking into my chest like a stone. So Gaia had failed his purpose. And yet he remained, a ruined vestige of a greater god's plan. But perhaps not useless. I'll deal with that later, I muttered, already calculating the possibilities. Too many moving parts already. And there was still one more mystery, a name echoing in the back of my mind. Veldanava. Not just as myth, not just as lost god. But the sealed form, the human shell he had worn in the twilight of his days. The one now slumbering within the deepest chamber of Ramirez's labyrinth in Ingracia. I had sensed it once. Of cause. A breath of divinity wrapped in human bones, his aura diluted, buried, fractured, but not gone. I would go to him, later, when the storm settled. When Clayman fell. When I had my answers. For now, I waited. 2 days. That was all. Then, Velgrynd and I would walk into Walpergus together, side by side, her eyes molten gold and her pride tenfold heavier than her presence, her beauty like fire pressed into a mold of arrogance and silence. She still wouldn't look me in the eye unless I forced her, she wouldn't speak of her feelings if they existed at all, but I had seen the way her gaze lingered when she thought I wasn't watching, how she smoothed down the hem of her elegant black cheongsam with claws that trembled slightly, just slightly, when I stepped too close. She was fire incarnate. And yet around me, she tried to be normal, whatever that meant to a being like her. Raphael's voice stirred again, quieter now. Master. Emotional resonance detected. Projected likelihood of Velgryn's internal conflict, 84.2%. Prognosis, increasing instability. I tilted my head. She'll crack eventually. Affirmative, or combust. I laughed quietly. Walpergus awaited. Let them come. Let the demons gather. Let Clayman choke on the ruin of his ambition. We were ready. The great oak-paneled office nestled in the crystalline heart of Tempest's central citadel was silent, save for the occasional rustle of turning pages and the melodic tinkle of porcelain meeting porcelain. Afternoon sunlight filtered through stained glass windows carved with Tempest's emblem, dappling the marble floor with motes of gold, crimson, and azure. Velvet drapes whispered in the breeze conjured by subtle ventilation magic, and all was, for the moment, peaceful. I sat behind my massive, meticulously carved obsidian desk decorated with enchanted glyphs and subtle protective wards that shimmered like stars beneath the lacquered surface, doing precisely nothing. And in my current state, that felt like a luxury. Across from me, lounging like a dragoness choosing to grace mortal decor with her divine weight, Velgrynd reclined upon the long leather couch, her legs elegantly crossed, her black cheongsam embroidered with glimmering gold thread rising slightly at the slit with every shift. Her long white gloves framed the romance novel she held aloft, eyes glowing like twin suns behind her lashes as she pretended not to notice how often I glanced at her. She hadn't turned a single page in the last 10 minutes. Shizu quiet, graceful, and somehow more present than most living gods sat beside her, sipping tea in that delicate way of hers that always made me feel like some amateur still learning how to be dignified. The steam curled upward like a spirit escaping prayer. On my desk sat Ramirez. Literally. The tiny fairy demon lord, legs swinging freely in the air, was flanked by her self-appointed sentinels Beretta, ever silent and watchful in their pitch-black shell, and Trainee, whose emerald gaze always carried the patience of the forest and something older still. Ramirez had a cookie in one hand and crumbs all over my paperwork, of course. It was a rare moment, this the world quiet enough to breathe. Maybe that's why the question escaped me like a bubble rising from deep within a still pond. "Hey, Ramirez," I said casually, folding my hands behind my head and leaning back. "Mind telling me about the new demon lords? I already know Guy, Milam, Carrion, Frey, Clayman, Leon, and you." Ramirez blinked at me, mid-chew, then brightened like a child whose turn had finally come during show and tell. "Eh? You already knew 7 of us?" she squeaked, wings fluttering erratically behind her like a drunk hummingbird. I nodded once, slowly. "Well then," she puffed out her tiny chest almost impressive if she weren't standing atop my tax reports and pointed dramatically. "There are 3 more. First is de Gruel. He's a giant. Like, a real giant, ancient as the continent's bones and probably dumber than a rock. But boy can he punch mountains into valleys." I raised a brow. "A literal giant? He guards the western edge and has like 40 kids or something." She beamed as if that explained everything. "Right. And then there's Roy Valentine, a vampire demon lord." I paused, my head tilting just slightly as the name sent cold sparks down my spine. "Wait. Valentine? As in Luminous Valentine, and Twilight Valentine?" Ramirez froze. Her cookie slipped from her hands, falling in slow motion toward my ancient enchanted parchment like a meteorite toward a glass dome. How do you know those names?" she squealed. I smirked slightly, letting my gaze drift toward the ceiling as I shrugged with practiced nonchalance. "Let's just say I knew them quite a bit." Velgrynd lowered her book at that just an inch, just enough to let those molten gold eyes peek over the edge. Her tone was a quiet blade, polished with curiosity and sheathed in haughty amusement. "So how did you know them, Rimmeru? You were sealed, weren't you, when I met you?" My lips curled. "Yes, I was sealed when you met me, but I met Twilight and Luminous, even before that." Velgrynd exhaled through her nose, an imperious breath laced with subtle suspicion. "I'm still curious about your life, Rimmeru." I turned my gaze to hers, deliberately letting the silence linger between us like an invisible tether. "Good," I said at last. "Let's keep it that way. Just a little longer." She clicked her tongue and buried her face behind the book again, but I noticed her fingers twitch on the binding. I turned back to Ramirez. "So then who's the last one?" She pouted immediately. Him. I don't like him. It's Dino." "Dino?" I leaned forward, arching a brow. "As in, angel?" She flailed her tiny arms. How do you know that? Are you reading my mind? Stop reading my mind." "I'm not," I laughed, ruffling her hair. "You just talk a lot. It's like I'm psychic just by being near you." "Meanie," she squealed, and with all the fury of a dust mote in a tornado, she punched my cheek with her tiny fist. It felt like being booped by a marshmallow. She huffed, puffed out her cheeks, then fluttered back to the desk, snatching a cookie with a muttered, "HMPH." I grinned. She was adorable when angry, and dangerous when underestimated. But still, I had to clarify one thing. "So this Roy Valentine guy, he's a demon lord?" Ramirez sighed with all the weariness of a being older than the planet's tectonic plates. Sigh. "Since you already know Luminous, I'll just say it. Roy's not real. He's just a fake demon lord, a proxy used by Luminous to hide her identity." I blinked. "Why?" Velgrynd, again lowering her book just enough to let her voice cut through the room like a violin string, answered before Ramirez could. "Luminous Valentine is a demon lord, yes. But she hides her existence. To play the role of the goddess Luminous, worshipped by the Western Holy Church. My mouth twisted slightly. So she's both demon lord and divine figure? That is correct, Master, Raphael chimed in within the theater of my mind, her voice clean and musical as always, part machine, part woman, part something beyond either. Furthermore, the leader of the 10 great saints, Hinata Sakaguchi, is under Luminous direct command. I exhaled slowly. Hinata. Of course she's involved. So there were 10 demon lords now. One of them a fallen angel. One of them a vampire playing puppet. One of them technically a goddess in disguise. And somehow Guy Crimson, the oldest, most terrifying, most flamboyant demon to ever strut across the battlefield in a crimson overcoat, was still sitting comfortably on his throne, bored and amused by the chaos. I rubbed my temples. This next Walpergus is going to be entertaining. And outside the stained glass windows, the sun dipped a little lower, casting long shadows across the marble floor, like the hands of fate reaching toward the thrones of the mighty. Velgryn's POV tch. What a distasteful atmosphere, I thought with a scoff curling in my throat as I reclined ever so regally on the velvet couch, legs crossed with perfection only centuries of divine discipline could teach, the sheer black cheongsam I adorned flowing like ink over flame, embroidered with gilded eastern dragons that slithered across the silk like heralds of my dominion. I didn't need to look up to know they were talking about me. His eyes lingered far too long for a mere passing glance, and Shizu, that quiet flame, was watching me like one might observe a crack forming in the armor of a god. I gripped the delicate spine of the romance novel between gloved fingers, the blush of love, some insipid tale of longing, betrayal, and a kiss beneath falling starlight. Absurd. Fictional. And yet I was on my 5th read. Rimmeru sat there, as always, like an enigma wrapped in an absurd child's form, propped in his ornate chair like a demon king masquerading as a bureaucrat, head tilted, smirking lips hiding untold truths, and those unblinking golden eyes burning brighter than the sun. And when he spoke next, I knew it wasn't meant for the fluttering little fairy. So, Ramirez, how much has Lumi-chan grown? His voice oozed curiosity, yet each syllable was dipped in something else. Something venomous, playful, yet sharp. Is she beautiful? My grip on the book faltered. Ramirez blinked. Luminous? You mean the vampire girl? She chirped, scratching her tiny head before puffing up with that ridiculous smugness of hers. Well, duh, of course she's beautiful. But not as much as me, obviously. I could hear the grin stretch on Rimmeru's face. I see, he said, and then he turned. Looked directly at me. Not at the novel. Not at the couch, at me. I'm so excited to see Lumi-chan again, how dare he? Shizu picked it up at once. That damned woman with her gentle aura and frightening insight, her face blooming into a quiet smile as she sipped her tea. Oh? She asked sweetly. Someone you like, perhaps? He chuckled lightly. Let's just say, she and I have some history. And that was it. The words "some history" thundered like divine judgment through the chambers of my pride. My hand trembled and, before reason could chain my wrath, I slammed the novel upon the table with a force that made even Beretta's metallic frame clink slightly and Trainee's evergreen gaze widen. You dare mention that disgusting, blood-sucking, shameless vampire woman in this room, in my presence, and call it history? I roared, standing with flames igniting in my eyes, my voice cracking the space like the wrath of Rudra reborn. What was your relationship with Luminous? Answer me, Rimuru Ashra Tempest, now. Dead silence. Ramirez flew behind Beretta and Trainee like a child hiding behind her caretakers, peeking nervously with wide eyes. Ooh, she's mad, she whimpered. Even Rimmeru blinked, clearly not expecting a reaction so fierce. Shizu's cup halted halfway to her lips, her brow arched in quiet astonishment. Velgrynd, Rimmeru said slowly, carefully, it's not that deep. We met once. That's all. I narrowed my eyes. Really? My voice carried the heat of 10,000 suns. I could feel it. That awful twisting inside my chest, unfamiliar and detestable. Emotions I had crushed beneath my talons for eons now slithered like smoke from a rekindled pyre. Jealousy. Was this it? He nodded. Really? Then Shizu laughed. That soft, almost motherly giggle she kept reserved for her students or the wind. He's teasing you, Velgrynd, she said plainly, looking at me with those calm, understanding eyes. He said it to get a rise out of you. And you gave him exactly what he wanted. The world stopped. I turned to her, face burning. What? Rimuru looked away, biting back a grin, confirming it without words. The audacity, the absolute audacity of that slime. Rimuru floated up, smirking with dangerous mischief. I saw something I never thought I'd see. The mighty scorched dragon Velgrynd was blushing. I should record this. This is history. Say another word, fairy, I hissed, crimson aura swelling from beneath my feet, and I'll turn you to ash so fine, the wind will scatter your soul into the void between stars. Rimuru yelped and ducked behind Trainee again. Eek, even Milam doesn't go that far. Rimuru, the smug demon in Slime's flesh, finally laughed. I never knew you were this easy to fluster, Velgrynd. Shizu leaned on her palm and nodded sagely. You might have poked the dragon one too many times. I straightened my back, tossing my hair with a scoff and walking gliding back to the couch with the dignity of a sovereign goddess returning to her throne. HMPH. If I appear disturbed, it's only because the mention of that parasite offends my senses. Do not mistake my refined reaction as anything as mundane as emotional vulnerability. Of course, Rimuru said, absolutely not believing me. Shizu sipped again. Of course. Rimuru muttered, of course, from behind Beretta. I sat, snatched the novel back into my lap, and resumed reading with a sharp huff. My cheeks still burned. Infernal slime. Cursed emotions. But still, even as I flipped the page, barely reading the ink, a part of me churned restlessly, caught between irritation and something softer. Jealousy, yes, but not the hateful kind that sours the stomach. It was warm. Dangerous. I had never felt such fire when someone looked at Lucia, or even at Milam, but now. When Rimuru looked at me with those knowing, golden eyes, when he smirked and said things just to provoke my reaction, when Shizu pointed it out so plainly it pierced something deeper. Something I had guarded for millennia with fire and pride. Was it weakness to enjoy it? No, I told myself. I am Velgrynd, the scorched dragon. Pride incarnate. None surpass me save perhaps that damned brother of mine, and even he is a lizard-brained fool. But, even pride, isn't immune to warmth. I turned a page, and read nothing. Another day had passed, another heartbeat of the world fluttered by, irrelevant to a being such as I, the scorched dragon, younger sister to Star King Dragon Veldanava, marshal of the empire, and incarnation of divine wrath. To most, time is a river flowing, linear, rushing ever forward. But to one such as I, forged in the primeval crucible of creation itself, time is stagnant, like the lake now at my feet, unmoved and eternal, yet somehow, beautiful. The lake. That lake. It had not changed. Despite its new home nestled within Rimmeru Tempest's kingdom, a kingdom that rose from nothing and yet dared to rival divine empires, the lake still shimmered with the same sacred elegance it had when I first beheld it over 4,000 years ago, when a golden-eyed anomaly named Ashura shattered the tedium of eternity. The trees around it had changed, the soil had been claimed by this rising civilization, and even the very air was now thick with his magical ooze. Yet the lake remained timeless, like a frozen memory embedded in the garden of gods. The moonlight spilled silver across the glassy surface. One moon, cold, alone. How fitting. I had long thought myself above such mortal sentiments: loneliness, nostalgia, affection. Emotions were the shackles of the weak. And yet, as the night breeze whispered through my hair and my reflection trembled in the water's surface, I found myself staring at the moon as though it might answer the questions I refused to speak aloud. Then, I heard them footsteps. Soft, deliberate, too light for a soldier, too elegant for a servant. I turned, already knowing. He stood behind me, Rimuru Ashura Tempest, clad in loose white silks, the sort mortals might wear to bed, though of course, he had no need of sleep. He looked too soft in that moment, almost delicate, like a ripple in time, or the echo of a memory long buried in crystal. You're awake? I asked, my voice as cold and sharp as diamond, honed by habit, not malice. Shouldn't you be resting? I don't sleep, remember, he replied with a lazy smile, the kind that never failed to annoy me, if only because it stirred something I refused to name. Slimes don't need it. Then why are you here? He walked closer, eyes not on the moon or lake, but on me, always on me as though I were the one celestial body in his sky. I could ask you the same. What's the scorched dragon doing out here? Looking wistfully at the moon like some lonely princess in a fairy tale? I narrowed my eyes. I was simply admiring the sky, alone, as I prefer. Yet before I could move, before I could shatter the air with my next rebuke, he was behind me, arms wrapping around my waist, chest pressed against my back. He was warm, too warm, infuriatingly so. "Wah, what do you think you're doing?" I hissed, reaching to push him away, pride rising like fire in my blood. But then, he whispered, "Please, let me be like this, just for a moment." My hand froze mid-air, and for that moment, so did everything else. The wind stopped. The stars ceased to twinkle. My heart, my ancient, invincible heart skipped. What is this? Why does this feel unbearable and necessary all at once? I don't like it. I like it. No, I loathe it. I don't understand. What spell is this mortal casting? You knew me. Back then, he said softly. 4,000 years ago. When I was just Ashura. A being without purpose. An unnecessary existence. Something left behind by creation itself, meant to die, to fade, to vanish. His voice was gentle. Too gentle. It clawed at memories I had buried beneath mountains of pride. But then you came into my life, and suddenly, I had a reason to continue, a reason to want to be seen again. I even challenged your brother, your eldest brother. My breath caught. You challenged Veldanava? He nodded. I challenged the impossible, to become necessary, to prove that even something unwanted could earn a place in existence. He turned his head slightly, cheek brushing mine, voice low and raw. And I won. For a moment, I felt like the stars above had shattered and rained down into my soul. You did the impossible, I whispered, but it felt more like a prayer. Yes. I wanted to scoff. I wanted to deny him. I wanted to call it arrogance, delusion. But I knew my brother. I knew what he represented. And for Rimmeru, no, Ashura, to win that. It defied not logic, but divinity itself. I know this is selfish, he murmured, but don't leave me again. That's not for you to decide, I snapped, voice sharp again, but not because I hated him. Besides, I am Velgrynd. The scorched dragon. I belong to no one. He chuckled softly. You are. You always will be. But no one truly belongs to no one. Everyone belongs to someone. Eventually. Nonsense. It's not. And as if to defy me, he held me tighter. I didn't resist. I couldn't. I didn't want to. What is this warmth? It feels like drowning, and yet I do not struggle. Maybe, I said slowly, the words tumbling from somewhere I didn't recognize, maybe if the impossible truly can become possible. He tilted his head. Like what? I looked to the sky, the solitary moon above that lake, the same as it had been for millennia. The sky bears one moon. Alone. But if one day, 2 moons shined, and stars beyond counting lit the sky, then maybe, just maybe, something impossible could become real. He was quiet for a beat. Is that all? Yes, I whispered. Then, I felt his hand lift gently, tenderly over my eyes. Then when I take my hand away, look, I nodded, silent. And then he removed it. I opened my eyes. The sky had changed. 2 moons hung in the night, a perfect twin, casting mirrored light over the world. And stars. Stars beyond counting, more than any night sky had ever held, more than even the heavens themselves had dared to contain. They shimmered like tears across infinity, like promises unspoken in dreams reborn. My breath caught. I, Velgrynd, the proudest of dragons, sister to the Creator, stood in silence as the sky unfolded a miracle for me. And in that impossible sky, I forgot how to be alone. Then I asked, perhaps too quickly, perhaps too sharply, my voice laced with suspicion I didn't understand. How? And he, still standing behind me, his warmth impossibly near and yet uninvited, murmured softly with a gentleness that did not suit someone who wielded so much power, you asked. And I did. I proved it, Velgrynd. That everyone, even those who claim otherwise, belong to someone eventually. That truth happened, someday, somehow, and it applies to you too. His words did not echo. They pierced like arrows, not meant to harm but to remind, to awaken some dormant chamber I had buried beneath centuries of scorching pride and unmarred dignity. But that's impossible, I replied, almost scornfully, my voice hard yet trembling, my heart refusing to accept the premise even as it beat faster for reasons I could not name. Is it though? He asked again, his voice lowering to that infuriating whisper that brushed against my ear like smoke, teasing, intimate, maddening. Your brother, Veldanaba. He fell for a mortal. Lucia. A fragile, delicate human with no divine essence. And yet he cherished her more than the stars he once created. A scoff tore itself from my throat before I could restrain it. He was foolish, I declared, proudly, eyes narrowing as I forced them skyward again. Even if he was the creator. Even if he was a god, to bind himself to something so fleeting was reckless sentiment, dangerous indulgence. And yet, behind me, I felt Rimmeru's embrace tighten not as one seeking permission, but as if grounding me, holding me to reality as though I was the one drifting into dreams. Then I, too, must be foolish, he said, his voice a trembling current of certainty, because I have fallen for the dragoness I now hold in my arms. The world spun. I did not breathe, I forgot how. In that single sentence, impossibly simple, cruelly straightforward, my pride fractured like crystal kissed by flame. My thoughts scattered, a storm of contradictions. What is this? What is this feeling? Confusion clawed its way up my throat. Anger, perhaps. No, not quite. Not at him, at myself. There was a warmth blooming within me, slow and steady like lava from a deep fissure I had buried long ago. It twisted into calmness, into want, into longing. It horrified me. It soothed me. This was not normal. I am Velgrynd. I am the scorched dragon. I am pride incarnate, above all others. And yet he whispered, would you be my queen? That voice, smooth as silk, dangerous as devil, beautiful as a god. Sun of my world. And moon of the night sky. Just for me. I almost choked. My wings, if they'd been out, might have shattered the garden with a single beat. You don't even know what you're asking, I said, almost desperately, eyes narrowing as if I could still recover ground in this battlefield of emotion. You have no idea what I am, what you're getting at. Oh, he whispered against my neck, that forbidden heat trailing down my spine like fire. I know exactly what I'm getting at. I hated how my knees weakened. I hated how his breath made my skin react like some helpless hatchling. You speak like a predator, I snapped, turning my head just enough to flash my golden eyes at him, but you're the prey, Rimuru. He chuckled. The bastard chuckled low, sultry, certain. You've mistaken the roles, Velgrynd. You were the prey all along. I've just been hunting patiently. The scorched dragon herself. Arrogant. Unyielding. Infuriating. And yet I felt myself falter. I tried to speak, to reclaim the lead in this dance of dominance. But his lips brushed so close to my ear that my words melted before they formed. My body betrayed me, leaning ever so slightly backward into him. Why did I want this? Why did it feel safe? Was this what mortals called love? My gaze lifted again, this time involuntarily. The sky, once stark and empty, now held 2 moons, and uncountable stars shimmered like dreams, dancing in the deep canvas of night. Then, gently, his hand slid up and tilted my chin toward him, his fingers delicate yet commanding. Let the feeling sink in, he said, his voice low, slow, deliberate. Don't think. Just feel. He turned me with care, and I allowed it. The scorched dragon, allowed it, and our faces grew closer, the garden falling silent as if time itself wished not to disturb us. My eyes closed, against my own pride's protest, but just as our lips nearly met. Oh, Rimuru-sama? Velgrynd-sama? You're both here. The voice shattered the spell like a thrown crystal against stone. I jerked back, scowling, pride returning in full fury. Behave yourself, I snapped at Rimmeru, avoiding his gaze, heart thundering in my chest as though I'd narrowly escaped some final fate. We turned to find Shuna standing there, smiling with a mischief that made me want to burn something, and she in behind, her cheeks burning brighter than Ifrit's core. Rimmeru sighed, shoulders slumping with the weight of disrupted romance. Can this world let me have a single moment to myself? He muttered. Yesterday it was Shizu. Now you too? Both girls quickly bowed, eyes wide with embarrassment. Forgive us, Xian said, voice too loud, while Shuna merely covered her mouth, clearly enjoying the scene more than propriety should allow. I didn't stay to hear the rest. My pride had suffered enough. I'm going to sleep, I declared coldly, turning on my heel with a flourish of ethereal silk and fire-threaded hair. The walk to my chambers was longer than usual. The halls echoed with silence, and my footsteps seemed louder than ever. And when I finally closed the doors behind me, sealing myself away from eyes, warmth, and temptation, I leaned back against them, one hand clutching my chest as if it could still the traitorous beating within. What was that? I almost let him. I wanted to let him. That smile, that voice, that embrace. I should have turned to flame and scorched the very notion from this world. And yet, I did not. I stood there. I let it happen. I let him touch me. And for the first time, in all my years, I felt something I could not quantify. Not dominance. Not superiority. I felt cherished. That thought alone forced me to lie down in bed, furious at my own thoughts. I wrapped myself in golden silk sheets, but no warmth compared to his. Damn him. Damn him and his foolishness. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow was Walpergus. I would face demon lords and dragons, schemes and history. I would be the scorched dragon again. Proud. Sovereign. Untouchable. But for tonight. Just for tonight. I let sleep take me, wondering why I wanted to be held like that again. To be continued.